What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of The Jump. This is not a Saturday night podcast. I'm actually doing this right as the AP poll just dropped, and we have a new number one. After those games, Saturday is not very shocking because number one Texas goes down at home to the Georgia Bulldogs. So we'll do like this to be a recap episode. It's not on Saturday night like I mentioned, but same type of flow. So we'll go through these games. I'll have an episode later in the week talking about Heisman and different stuff like that. But we'll talk about these right off rip. And we'll go chronologically. Actually, no, we'll go random, whatever pops in my head. Because I think the number one game is the game that game day went to. So, number one, Texas hosting number 5, Georgia. In this game, Georgia's defense was the entire difference. So, Georgia's defense had... I know that the meme was going around in the picture like right before half saying the Texas quarterbacks are seeing ghosts. That was really true. I mean, between Jalen Walker and Michael Williams, just that entire Georgia defense had Texas seeing things they had never seen before. Georgia goes in there and just the Georgia offense looked okay, not crazy. I remember London Humphreys, he dropped some balls. Like Georgia's offense, they had a lot of drops. Carson Beck didn't play a phenomenal game. I mean, he had like 3 picks. But it was the Georgia defense. That was the story. I mean, all 15 points for Texas came in the third quarter. And, there were drives, but essentially this was kind of like a dominant performance overall by Georgia. So, if you ever thought that Georgia was out of that national title group, they're right back in there. Winning on the road at number 1 Texas is one of the most impressive things you can do. And this game, obviously, the talk from this game would be if Georgia went in there, dominated, and did this, and Quinn never got pulled out, people would be talking all week, should they play Arch? But instead of having that be the case, Sark throws in Arch. Arch doesn't play good either. So it was this Georgia defense that did all of this to this Texas team. Like I said, Jalen Walker and Michael Williams, those are 2 guys that can be like first-round picks. And they went in there and just dominated. They legitimately, like Kelvin Banks Jr., he's going to be a top 5 pick, top 10 at worst. And they made him look like this was his first football game he's ever played before. It was incredible what they were able to do. Obviously, the controversial call late. I have a lot of thoughts on it. I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but it was extremely controversial, obviously. So for this call to have been flipped the way it was makes it look like throwing trash on the field is okay. And it's ironic that it's the only teams to throw trash on the field are both UT. But besides that, this was a horrible call initially. We'll leave it at that. This was a bad call. It was not a defensive PI. If anything, it was an offensive PI. You should have called it that way. But obviously the big return, whatever, they get to the 9-yard line. And then they reverse it after trash has been thrown, and it's like 7 minutes of real time. You can't do that. That just lets everybody know that, if we don't agree with the call at our home stadium, why don't we just all throw beer cans onto the field? And it's just not – it's not a good look. Just for the NCAA, the SEC, everything. Everything to do with the call there. But nonetheless, they got the call right. So in the end, it resulted in the right action, but it's just not a good look overall. It's not at all. But for Texas, though, I mean, this doesn't. Texas is still in that group. They're still up there with the big boys, but it was kind of like a come to earth moment because this is a team that was undefeated, hadn't been tested at all the entire year, just basically cruised to 6-0 at that point, and their claim to fame victories so far was Michigan, who's awful, Oklahoma, who's horrendous, and then they beat a checked out Mississippi State team. Well, not checked out. Mississippi State's actually playing well right now. Gave A&M a fight. But yeah, Texas. This was kind of. I said it on the last podcast, and I can maybe throw the clip in here. But also, if you do take the betting tips from the jump, you're welcome. I said take Georgia money line. I think in the last podcast I said take Georgia money line, Illinois money line, LSU cover the spread. If you did that, you're probably a happy man right now. Go treat your girlfriend to a nice dinner if you did that. But I said Georgia was going to go in here and win this game. I had no doubt in my mind. I know I have the. If you're watching on the YouTube, I have a Georgia shirt on right now, but I'm not a Georgia fan. Just wore it for the occasion. But I said Georgia was going to win this game, but it didn't take any. If Georgia would have gone in there and won by 50, I would be like, all right, Texas, you got some things to work on. But yeah, they go in there, and Texas is still right there. Like Texas, they play at Vandy this week. Vandy is officially ranked. If you haven't seen the rankings, they're 25. But they'll win that one. And Texas did get a fair hand of a schedule, being in the SEC this year. Like it's not a unreal schedule that they can't maintain. So, yeah, they'll probably win out. And the interesting thing with the SEC is like both these teams, along with A&M, LSU, I guess Alabama's still in the mix, but Tennessee, and there's like 7, 8, maybe 9 teams. Like there's legitimately like 8 or 9 teams that can win this conference. And the SEC is probably going to get 3, maybe 4 teams into the playoff. And there's like 7 or 8 teams that can legitimately talk themselves into making that and making the college football playoff. And it's crazy. It's pure chaos. But yeah, Georgia rolls and they get back on track. This felt like an OG Georgia team. This felt like the Georgia where obviously Alabama's been knocked off. They don't have the Nick Saban. It looks like there's not those dominant teams that we've had pre-NIL, all of this. This felt like it. Georgia looked like they were moving different. They were faster than Texas, stronger. They did whatever they wanted to. And they just played an all-around phenomenal game. And Trevor Etienne was a big part of that. He had 87 yards and 3 touchdowns. And that kind of felt like his coming out party because Carson Beck had thrown for 450 a couple times. Like, bro was throwing crazy games. But Trevor Etienne, he comes out and puts up 3 touchdowns. So it was cool to see Georgia kind of get back on track. And they were able to, they kind of they controlled this game from start to finish. Like, at half, they're up 23-0. And they can kind of take the foot off the gas a little bit. And they did. And it's still a 30-15 victory for Georgia. So, if you're Georgia, you can't be anything but ecstatic. Because, Georgia's still got to go at Ole Miss. But my Kentucky Wildcats showed that that's not an impossible task to go win there. And obviously, Ole Miss is still fighting. They've got the 2 losses right now, so they're still fighting for a spot. So that'll be a playoff eliminator at that point when they go there. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a Kentucky fan, but Florida is a scary. With DJ Lagway back there, this is a lot scarier than what it was with Graham Mertz. So Georgia's got to worry about that one. Georgia needs to. I've said it multiple times. They need to find the SEC. They need to do something because the schedule that they have is brutal. But this was one that they had to check off. There was the big 3 that I thought of before the season. At Alabama, at Ole Miss, and at Texas. And I said that they got to get one of them. And they have a chance to get 2 when they go to Ole Miss. But they still play the Tennessee Volunteers when they come to town. And so I'll transfer over to that game. Tennessee, obviously this game doesn't feel the same as the 2022 victory. The 2022 victory for the Vols felt like this program's back. That felt like the one to get over the hump. It felt like Heupel was the right hire. The glory days of Tennessee, the feels like 98, all of that. It was a culmination of everything in 2022. Smoking the heck out of the cigars. You got Peyton Manning and Jalen Hyatt taking pictures in the locker room. It was awesome. But at this point, it's not that it's not an impressive win. Alabama's still a really good team, physical up front, and it's a great win. But this Tennessee team, this almost felt like this should happen. I picked this as a win preseason, before we even knew Alabama was not inevitable. Tennessee, this was a game that they had to end up winning. When you drop that one at Arkansas, they still go to Georgia, like I mentioned. They got to get this game if they want to make the college football playoff. And the story of this game was the story of the halves, in my opinion, because that first half, Nico Iamaleava couldn't throw worth a crap. He was overthrowing everybody, selling everything, and they're held scoreless in the first half. I think it was since the 60s, they've had 3 straight scoreless first halves. It's crazy. But then he comes out in that second half and plays almost as perfect a game as you can imagine. If that's the Nico they get the rest of the year, this team is a second, third round playoff team. No doubt in my mind. That Nico can carry this team offensively alongside Dylan Sampson, touchdown machine. Dylan Sampson just wakes up, brushes his teeth, and gets a touchdown. That's like a day in the life of Dylan Sampson. But like this defense, James Pierce, obviously, number-wise, he doesn't have the numbers to go with like some of these other names that are leading the country in sacks or whatever. But just the attention that he grabs from like the offensive line and schematically what teams have to do to scheme around James Pierce. Like this guy's a first-round top 10 pick. Like this guy is taking over the game. And he doesn't have to have the numbers to do it. It's one of those things. But and I mentioned Dylan Sampson. 139 yards, 2 touchdowns. And it sucks because Ashton Jeanty has taken every single bit of the shine from every running back across the country. Like Caleb Johnson's been balling, Kyle Monungai's been balling, Amarion Hampton, Dylan Sampson. Like these guys have put up crazy years, phenomenal years. I think Dylan Sampson's like on pace to like set the school record for touchdowns. And like they don't get the shine because Ashton Jeanty's Barry Sanders again. So I just want to give a little light to Dylan Sampson. This guy, a little preview, he will be on my Heisman list this week. I don't know if he's going to be 9, 10, but he'll be on there because what he's done so far, he deserves to be in that conversation of the Heisman guys. So it's super cool to see. But this game, I think it's more about what Tennessee was able to do in the second half. They scored 24 points in the second half and win this game and defensively do all they need to. It's more about what Tennessee did than I think what Alabama didn't do. But you're lying to yourself if you don't think this Alabama team is just a whole lot different in every little aspect of the game because I believe it was Keon Sabb. It might not have been. I don't remember who it was late in the game. The 15-yard penalty there to get it to 4th and 22. That play, Nick Saban would have had that guy maybe working minimum wage in Japan by now. Like that guy, that Alabama player punching. It's such a crucial time in the game. And he's sitting there punching guys and swinging on them just because he's getting jawed at. Obviously, it should have been an offsetting penalty. It was a mess up by the SEC. That should have been offsetting. But the fact that he's doing it in the first place is just crazy. And it feels like DeBoer has no control over this team, and it's showing. And the one that made headlines was the 4th and 1. I think it was a QB run with Jalen Milroe, just like right up the middle. It was a little tush-push type thing. But then the 2 wide receivers over there were sitting there doing jump shots. Like, is this incarnate word or is this Alabama? I don't understand what that, like, Alabama under Nick Saban, it was discipline, hard-nosed football, not doing anything too flashy. It started to change a little bit at the end of the Nick Saban era. Like, not that he was he was just more lenient because, like, these kids are just going to be kids. But this was ridiculous. They're shooting jump shots on a play, like, they're just getting cute, and that's exactly why they're 5-2 right now and ranked 16 in the country. Like this would have never happened under Saban, and DeBoer's just got to figure it out. I just feel like he doesn't have control over this team. And Jalen Milroe, obviously very skilled as a runner, but he only throws to Ryan Williams. Like he had 239 yards. He literally only throws to Ryan Williams. That was his touchdown too. He's just not been great. And I said it in the offseason, which he's been better than what I thought he was going to be. Like, this guy was legitimately on Heisman list these first few weeks, but I didn't think he'd even be that good. But, like, they're getting the Ty Simpson call. It's already happening, and we're not even in November. And that was another stat that was floating around was Alabama has 2 losses before November for the first time since 2007. This is crazy. This is just not Alabama at all. And yeah, it's starting to show. It's unreal. What's been going on with Alabama, and they're just with the Ryan Williams talk. Like, there's just nobody else that like jumps off the sheet at you. Like, obviously Ryan Williams is one of the best players in the country, and like that guy, like you don't need anybody else. But like the Alabama that we knew, like Jam Miller is not Najee Harris. Like Jamal Haynes is not, or is it Justice Haynes? I think Jamal is Georgia Tech. Justice is Bama, I think. Unless I mix those two up. What Haynes, he is not any of these other, like, these Alabama running backs that they had were absolute game-changing running backs. While on the outside, they have these Devontae Smiths, John Mechie's, Jerry Jeudy's. Like, there's just Ryan Williams. That's all that they have. That's all there is. And it's just not exciting. Like, Jeremy Bernard has been disappointing. None of the tight ends have done anything. And it's just, it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel for Alabama. But the light at the end of the tunnel is they have Alabama by their name. They're ranked 16. If they win out, which includes a win at Ole Miss or at LSU, which would be tough, if they win out, they'll be in the playoff. I think that's. I had some guys arguing with me on Twitter last night, but if they win out, they're going to be in the playoff. I know it's not going to be a crazy strength of the schedule, but they still play Missouri. They still play LSU. So, like, they'll have a couple, but they can't slip up again. They've already got the 2 losses. And, yeah, it's just weird to see this version of Alabama. Just very undisciplined, and the defense is just, like, they're just not good. The defense is not good. Kane Womack is, I don't know what happened at halftime of that Georgia game, but Alabama's entire program fell apart. They held Georgia to 0 points in the first half, and since then have done absolutely nothing. So it's crazy to see. But, yeah, I mean, the cigars are being smoked in Knoxville. They take the field goal post down again, and it's happened 2 times in 3 years now. And Saban had that long streak on them. So it's crazy. And there's probably going to be people trying to figure out how much it's going to take to get Kalen DeBoer fired because Alabama has their crazy standards. But moving on from that one of the noon games, this game was phenomenal. Number 6 Miami at Louisville. We knew it would be an awesome game. Miami ends up winning 52-45 in an absolute shootout. 28 points for both teams in the second half. Tyler Shuck throws for 342 and 4 touchdowns. Damian Martinez, man, that last run to get them up 2 scores, that should be the number 1 play on SportsCenter. It won't be because it's not super flashy, but he legitimately picked up the entire Louisville defense, kept running, and then I think at one point Jeff Brom came off the sideline and jumped on top of his shoulders, and he still kept running and scored that touchdown. That's the difference. Miami's defense is obviously not spectacular. It shows flashes of being solid, but I mean, this Miami team has Damian Martinez that can do that, pick up an entire team and then finish a run. They have Cam Ward, who is going to be top 2 in Heisman. There's not a play on the field he can't make. And then you look at that defense, they've got playmakers out there. They have the best receiver in the ACC. It's crazy. That Cam Ward to Xavier Restrepo is the best duo in college football, in my opinion. That they can't be stopped. It felt like, because there was that 3rd and long or 3rd and whatever it was later in the game that Louisville fans were trying to call for the hold on. And he throws Xavier Restrepo for 65 yards. It was crazy. That duo is one for the ages. So I don't think there's a limit to this Miami team, though. Miami and Clemson are just on a path right now where they're just going to meet up in the ACC championship, and then we'll see what happens there. But I think, obviously Miami's played a lot of close games, and they could probably drop one soon. They play at Syracuse later in the year, and they could drop that one. But I don't know. It feels like Clemson and Miami are both just going to be in the playoff. They're both going to go undefeated and get to the playoff. So, but yeah, it's a super big win for Miami. Louisville did all they could. They handed Miami everything they had, and Louisville played a really good game too. Isaac Brown had their early touchdown. Tyler Shuck played a great game. They did everything they needed to. Jeff Brom getting gutsy, which they already had 2 losses before this game. Now 3 losses, but going forward on that 4th down, I was like, all right, let's get the popcorn ready. This is going to be an exciting finish, and it did end up being an exciting finish. And obviously there were a couple controversial calls there late in the game, but awesome game overall. It was a great start to the day, being the noon game to look forward to. So it was pretty sweet. Other than that, LSU, mentioned that one. They go to Fayetteville, win 34-10 in the whites. That game was awesome. Caden Durham, he joins that freshman class that I've been talking about. This is the best freshman class college football has ever seen, and it's not even close. Caden Durham, true freshman for LSU, he had 101 yards, 3 touchdowns. And he joins, he's with all those receivers, it's crazy. It's crazy what this freshman class has done. Iowa State, they went down 2 scores at UCF, and obviously some chaotic things happened, but they end up winning that game, 38-35. And Rocco Beck played a phenomenal game. And they're going into the bye week 7-0, first place in the Big 12. Well, with BYU, who played an absolute classic on Friday night. But yeah, Iowa State rolling, sitting at. I think they actually dropped. They swapped with Clemson, I believe. Clemson went to 9, down in the poll, and then Iowa State went to 10. So they just swapped spots, but that doesn't really matter. But Virginia, they go up early in this game. There wasn't a shock, or there wasn't like a scare for Clemson, but Clemson had to, it was similar to the Wake Forest game last week, where Clemson had to lock in and actually get the offense rolling. They end up winning 48-31. And Cade Klubnik continues to roll, 308 yards, 3 touchdowns. Phil Maffa, 78 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like, this offense is beautiful. It's crazy. Another game that was scary early, Georgia Tech went up 7-0 on Notre Dame in Atlanta. And it was like, all right, well, this could be something. It is the Georgia Tech with Pyron at quarterback. So they're obviously Haynes King's out, but it's still a scary Georgia Tech team. It's a physical team. They're gonna be able to run the ball. They'll be fine. Notre Dame ends up rolling 31-13, and they kind of just took over this game and never looked back. And Notre Dame is probably just gonna be in the playoff because their hardest game was at USC. They were looking for. They still played Navy and Army, which have been rolling. Army's beating teams so bad they fire their coach. So we'll see how that goes. But they do play Navy this week in MetLife Stadium. So that one's going to be an awesome game. Awesome game to look forward to for Notre Dame and Navy. A&M, they get the scare at Mississippi State, but they win 34-24. So Van Buren continues to look good. True freshman for Mississippi State. But A&M's got a big one this week. LSU coming to town. So big one at Kyle Field. A lot of playoff hopes on the line there. Then one of the games of the day, number 16 Indiana was hosting Nebraska. I don't know if I said it on there, but I bet it in every parlay I made, Indiana covering the spread. They more than covered the spread. What they did to Nebraska is illegal in 49 other states, but Indiana, 56-7. Curtis Rourke didn't play the second half, which if you were like a non-believer, maybe you're like, all right, well, Curtis Rourke's just been carrying the team. But Taven Jackson checks in, just throwing dimes as well, throwing touchdowns. So it literally felt like Indiana was like addicted to scoring. And if you don't follow the Twitter, at the Jump Sports on Twitter, I was posting them, and by the end of it, I was just putting like yawn emojis. Because it was like, dude, what are they supposed to do? Like, it was crazy. Dylan Raiola, there's one complaint. I heard Ari Wasserman from On 3. He was the one that I heard make this point. I think maybe he tweeted it, or I'd seen a clip or something somewhere. Dylan Raiola just can't move. He's got concrete feet, which with concrete feet, and you're playing UTEP, you can do that. You can get away with that. Your line can hold the weight for you. But when it's a well-coached team, well-disciplined team, and it's Indiana, every time he ran out of the pocket, he threw a pick. When he's in the pocket and he's dialed, he can throw any ball on the field. Nothing he can't make happen. But as soon as he has to move his feet, it's over. So he's got to figure that out. He's obviously a true freshman, so he's got plenty of time. But he fits the Patrick Mahomes comparison in looks, some of the throws he makes, but the second that has to come getting out of the pocket, they're completely different players. So it's crazy. Kansas State, another Big 12 team that BYU has the win over on that Friday night. Or was it a late Saturday night? I think it might have been a Saturday night. But BYU has that win over Kansas State where they obliterated them. Before we knew what BYU truly was. Kansas State's been rolling since then. Kansas State goes into Morgantown, 45-18 victory. And the 8 came late. So, Avery Johnson continues to like slowly figure it out. 298 yards, 3 touchdowns in this game. But yeah, Chris Kleiman, he's got his boys rolling, and Kansas State just looks phenomenal. Auburn almost went to Como and upset Missouri. And this was crazy because Brady Cook, I think it was 4 or 5 minutes into the game, has that non-contact injury. It looks scary. He goes, and it's not even one of those things where like he goes into the tent. He went to the locker room, and it was like, oh shoot, well we'll see. We'll see what happens. And it did not look good because Auburn goes up 17-3. Brady Cook ends up going to a hospital nearby, and ends up saying like, hey, I only have like 2.5 games left. I'm not missing this one, so I'm going to go back. He goes back and he finishes this game. They go back in, and I think they're down 17-6 at that point. They score the touchdown, and he scores the 2-point conversion. And then they go 95 yards to end up taking the lead and winning that one 21-17. So any hopes They're still there for Missouri, sitting at 6-1. Like I said, they play Alabama, so that one is obviously going to be a tough one. But but like for Missouri, they have all the pieces except for Cody Schrader. Cody Schrader, it feels like in hindsight, he was the machine of that team last year, the do-it-all running back, and now it's Nate Noel, which Nate Noel was also out and then came back. But Marcus Carroll, there's just different guys that, like, none of them amount to what Cody Schrader did for that offense last year. But Missouri, they get the much-needed win, and it felt like this was the one that, for Auburn, this was the final nail in the coffin, because Auburn should have won this game. Bad collapse. Giving up 15 in the fourth to lose the game. SMU continues to roll. They go to Stanford. Crazy ACC matchup to think of. But, the Kevin Jennings SMU team is continuing to roll. 40-10 victory. Another one I need to talk about. So, number 24 Michigan at number 22 Illinois. Felt good about the Illinois money line. I didn't know if the final would be 2-0 or what the score would be. But to say the least, this game matched Illinois' uniforms, which I thought were beautiful. I know a lot of the internet did not like them, but I thought they were absolutely phenomenal uniforms. If you didn't see them, it was the leather helmet look, like they painted the helmets, and that guy in Nebraska takes like 2.5 hours per helmet. So all of it just sounded awesome. But those uniforms were awesome. And then Illinois, it felt like they were up, like, what was it? It felt like they were up 13-7 for 5 hours. I felt like they started the game 13-7. And they end up winning that one 21-7. And Tuttle the Conqueror does not get it done. That Michigan team is just bad. They're just really, really bad. Like, they ended up throwing the ball 32 times. Jack Tuttle had 208 yards. Like, 100 of that was just bullcrap time. Michigan's just bad. Like, they're going to lose multiple games the rest of the season. And the crazy thing about Michigan is the best player on their team, it seems like, is always the running back. Or their backup running back. Khalil Mullings, 87 yards and a touchdown. But Donovan Edwards just sucks. Like, when he was the backup, he was phenomenal. But now his backup is better than him. So, and then for Michigan, like, Colson Loveland is maybe the best player on the team. Mason Graham and Will Johnson. Like, there's numerous guys on that defense that are their best player on the team. But, like, Colson Loveland is their wide receiver 1, tight end 1, running back 1, quarterback 1. That offense legitimately would have negative yards if it wasn't for Colson Loveland. So, what he's been able to do is incredible. Next game, the Navy midshipmen continue to roll. 51-17 victory over Charlotte. That whole offense is incredible to watch. Obviously, both service academies are a sight to see. Army won 45-28, and James Houston gets fired from East Carolina. But Bryson Daly is legitimately, like, legit Heisman. Like, he's like Heisman numbers. He had 147 passing yards and a touchdown. But to go along with that, 171 rushing and 5 touchdowns. It's crazy what he's been able to do. Kanye Udo, 102 yards. So that duo, like I said, Xavier Restrepo and Cam Ward might be the best duo, but that actually might legitimately be the best duo in college football. So both those teams are still rolling, both sitting atop of the American Athletic. The AAC is legit. It's a 3-team race. Tulane's in third, but like they have the 2 overall losses, so they're not going to make the playoff. But it's just going to get interesting because if you have a Boise State team who plays a massive, massive game this week against UNLV, but if you have a Boise State team that finishes the season 11-1, wins the Mountain West, yeah, they have a loss, but like if one of these teams, I still think that Boise State team gets in over an Army or Navy if one of them beats the other and beats Notre Dame, finishes undefeated. That Boise State team, like their only loss would be at Oregon in a game that they competed in. So, it's going to get super interesting just seeing how that whole thing comes out. Because, I mean, honestly, one of Army and Navy can make it alongside Boise State. So, it's going to be super cool to see following that as it winds down. I guess I should mention the Oregon Ducks do go to Purdue and don't get the spoiler makers treatment. Turns out that was a Jeff Brom thing. So they were number 2. They go in there and win 35-0. And yeah, they just roll. Evan Stewart continues his thing, 96 yards in this one. So he continues to just ball out. Yeah, in the game that I mentioned earlier, BYU hosting Oklahoma State on a Friday night, BYU ends up winning this one late, 38-35, but they nearly sold, giving up 14 in the fourth. But Jake Retzloff, BYU, he ends up turning into basically Patrick Mahomes there at the end and winning this game for BYU. So BYU's just still rolling, like can't be stopped at all. And they're not letting the Big 12 thing get them. Like, this would have been a very easy game to just lay down and just take the loss. But no, between Retzloff and LJ Martin and the whole team has just been phenomenal. And they actually, for the first time all season, Ollie Gordon played a great game, and they stopped a really good Ollie Gordon. So yeah, I don't know what Oklahoma State even does, because like we've said multiple times, like Gundy's not getting fired. In this game, they started that Rangel, or I don't remember. They started another guy, and then he was so bad that Alan Bowman comes in, and yeah, Alan Bowman. You know what the Alan Bowman experience is. But yeah, I don't know what you do with Oklahoma State, and they were picked as one of the top teams, but now they're 0-4 in the Big 12. It's crazy. One game I do need to mention. Yeah, going through a few of the games. Boston College got whooped, and Virginia Tech looks like they've figured some things out. 2-1 in the ACC. Duke got their first win over Florida State in program history. Brock Glenn is somehow worse than DJU. Rolling from that. Wisconsin, they won at Northwestern 23-3. What a showing from them. UCLA got a big win at Rutgers. Ethan Garbers balled out. I was posting some of the clips from this on Twitter, but 383 yards, 4 touchdowns for him. Like, what a game from Ethan Garbers. And he had that long rushing touchdown. Let's see. Yeah, he had the 48, or it wasn't a 48. It was 49-yard touchdown. It was crazy. So shout out to Ethan Garbers. Love that man. Then we had Wake Forest scrapes by a scary UConn team. Wake Forest is so bad. Big win for Cincinnati. That's another team that's a threat in the Big 12. 3-1 in the Big 12, but Arizona State would have been ranked, but they go down and lose by 10 at Cincy. I mentioned Auburn. I didn't mention USC yet. The 3 teams, Oklahoma, Auburn, USC. Those 3 teams, you couldn't pay me to be a fan of right now. Those 3 teams are so down bad that all of them are checking like every few minutes to see if their coach's buyout has gone down. That's how bad it is. And yeah, Oklahoma got whooped 35-9. And I don't know if I talked about the spread in the last episode. I have no idea how Oklahoma managed to. I don't know who they paid to get the favorite in this game, but they were like a 4-point favorite. And I was like, dude, take South Carolina money line. I had bet that, but like, that was crazy to me. I don't know how that happened. And that quarterback controversy gets even more annoying because they give Jackson Arnold an opportunity to redshirt when they benched him in the Tennessee game for Michael Hawkins. And then he's just being a team player, being a good dude, and says like, no, if y'all need me and you want me to play, I'll play. They burned it. I think this was the game that burnt his red shirt. They pull him back in while just getting blasted by South Carolina, and then he plays okay. That whole thing's just a dumpster fire. They got to fire Venables and figure something else out. Somehow NC State went to Cal and won. I was confused. I don't understand NC State at all. They're like the worst team I've ever seen. At the same time, they're winning games somehow. Kansas gets their second win, 42-14 over Houston. I thought that 5.5 was free money too. So I definitely took that. Then Bowling Green continues to roll. Harold Fannin, 171 yards, 10 catches. Good Lord, he's the best tight end in college football. Him or Colston Loveland. It's got to be one of those two. Those two are incredible. There's the USC at Maryland. This all ended up being karma from Lincoln Riley calling that timeout right before half and calling both teams out from running into the tunnel just to take a knee. And they have that fourth down play that they try to kick a field goal on late. It gets blocked. They could have tried to go for it in that game. And this was a game where the analytics worked. Maryland went and they went for 2 to get it to 6 points. Then they go score, kick an extra point to take the lead, 29-28 win. And yeah, they came back from 14 down. Lost its third game in a row. USC really, I saw people tweeting this, USC blew up the Pac-12 to lose to Minnesota and Maryland. It's crazy. Colorado, this has been one of my favorite things all season because Shador, 250, 2 touchdowns. This is a team that played without Travis Hunter in the second half, and their defense is crazy. They win 34-7, and they're just rolling. They're 5-2, 3-1 in the Big 12. This is another team that, like, the Big 12, there's like legit 10 teams that could make it, that can make their conference championship. It's incredible. Texas Tech loses their first conference game to Baylor, getting blasted. This Baylor team that's already got like Dave Aranda with 1 foot out the door, about to get fired. They go to Lubbock and win 59-35. It's incredible. Yeah, Vandy continues to roll. Like I said, they're ranked now, and they play Texas this week. They won 24-14 versus Ball State. Yeah, UNLV wins against Oregon State 33-25. So that I was rooting for them. It was one of those late night games on. I was rooting for them because I just want this UNLV Boise State matchup to be one for the ages. So I guess the last game I'll talk about is my Kentucky Wildcats, because we're not as down bad because we don't hold ourselves to the standard that USC, Oklahoma, and Auburn do. But we're down bad too. So there's a decent amount of the fan base trying to figure out what Mark Stoops' buyout is. If you're curious, it's around $44 million. So he won't be getting fired. But I've said from the time I started this podcast years ago, it would not shock me if like this was the season that Mark Stoops ended up retiring after, because his brother Bob Stoops retired at 55. Stoops is 55. Wait, I think he's right at 55 right now. No, he's 57 right now. Bob Stoops retired at 55. And his dad passed away at 55 while as a head coach. So I could see him walk away. This team, it just undisciplined, and there was a play where we were down, I think we were down 14 after the touchdown, and we had guys walking in the end zone after the touchdown, like mocking the crowd, doing the chomp. And that's just kind of the state of the program. It was kind of this game was kind of a snowball effect, and it's every issue that this team has had. DJ Lagway legitimately had, I didn't realize this is what his numbers ended up being. This is crazy. It's not that he had the yards. I knew he had the yards, but he had 7 completions for 259 yards. It did feel like every single play, either Dion would blow up, like, whoever is trying to guard him, wherever he's lining up. He would, like, bull rush them or swim move him, make it look stupid. He'd blow up the play. Or DJ Lagway would have a minute and a half that he could just sit back there and do whatever he wanted. So, yeah, it was kind of that was the story of the game, was DJ Lagway with, which is awesome to see, because if you want to see Florida succeed, which I do, he was dropping it right in the breadbasket every single time for all of these receivers. Yeah, Jaden Ball, I think he's a true freshman too. He had tied the school record. He had 5 touchdowns. Tied the school record with like Tim Tebow and some other legends. But yeah, 48-20 final, and yeah, it was snowball effect. It was, the offense play calling was terrible. Couldn't really run the ball. I don't know why Jamarion Wilcox doesn't get the ball more. Chip Trainum came back in this game, and this was a game where I said it in the last one that I thought we would get right, figure some things out. Lost to Vandy last week, but now we're sitting at 3-4 and 1-4 in conference. And our only like touchdowns were the Barry on flea flicker and then a Barry on kick return. So yeah, and then Gavin Wimsatt got in at the end. So it was just really all systems failure. There's just like no discipline. There's I felt bad too. Like Cutter Boley checked in and his first pass was a pick six. This game was just tough all across the board. No other way to put it. So yeah, we play Auburn now. This is a team that, I mean, Hugh Freeze isn't going to get fired because he is bringing in phenomenal recruits, but this is a very losable game. And I said it before this game, and I definitely think it now. We could lose to anybody on the schedule or beat anybody on the schedule. Like, a loss to Murray State isn't off the table, and a win at Texas isn't off the table. I just don't understand. And I could see Stoops retiring after this, and I don't know where the university goes from that point. Mitch Barnhart, our AD, like, I don't know if he goes and tries to hire John Sumrall from Tulane because he played at Kentucky, coached at Kentucky. So he already has a connection. If we don't hire him, somebody else big is going to go after him. But or if they just go hire Brad White, which is our defensive coordinator, I don't really know the route. But this was a game. There was a lot of games towards the end of the Calipari era where obviously he ended up leaving and not retiring. But there was a vibe from the game where you were like, all right, well, this is towards the end. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. Like, I think that the Texas A&M loss was the one for me for John Calipari where I was like, all right, this thing's coming to an end very, very soon. And this was kind of the same type of vibe. It just felt like this is towards the end of the Stoops era. And obviously, in my opinion, greatest coach in school history. But, yeah, it could come to an end. Like, we still got to go to Tennessee, to Texas, and still got to play Louisville. So, a lot of tough games left, and making a bowl isn't necessarily a guarantee at this point. So it would end that streak that we have for one of the longest streaks in all of college football, making a bowl every year. But we'll see what happens. So yeah, that's kind of the state of mind where I'm at. But I love this sport so much that it doesn't affect me as bad as it does other Kentucky fans. So if you're religious, say a prayer for some Kentucky fans because I've seen some down bad. But, you know, I love the sport overall so much. I love college basketball and college football so much that it can kind of help distract me as well from my own team if we're in a miserable spot. So, yeah, I guess that'll do it. Like I said, there will be an episode later on in the week. But, yeah, with that being said, thank you. Let me know your thoughts on some of these games. And with Oregon being the new number one, just your thoughts on that, and if they should have been one, or if you think somebody else should have been. Other than that, in the rankings, I don't think nothing alarming. It was Oregon 1, Georgia 2, Penn State 3, Ohio State 4, Texas 5, Miami State, Tennessee 7. So they just swapped where Bama was. I'm still shocked Indiana's 13. I'm shocked they're that low. And then BYU sitting at 11. So, yeah, Illinois went up 2 spots. Missouri dropped 2. So, yeah, that's the poll. That's the poll for the day. So, be back later in the week. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening on podcast, or thank you for tuning into the YouTube channel. All the support is greatly appreciated, and thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great week. Enjoy the NFL if that's what you're into this week too. So, thank you. Have a great week, and peace.